Good morning. Okay, this is so cool to be back here on campus. My name is Esteban Alvarez, and I am from the country of Uruguay, which is between Argentina and Brazil. A small 3.5 million people in our country. So I want to know how many of you play baseball here? Raise your hand. Basketball, volleyball, video games. There you go. So with our family, we moved to Uruguay. We're BBFI missionaries, and I was born in Uruguay as a preacher's home, as a preacher's in a preacher's home. I made a professional. I made a profession of faith when I was very young. At the age of 15, um, I surrendered to full time ministry, and at the age of 17, I was very away from God. I started to play music when I was 9, and that was my passion. But when I hit that stage in my life at the age of 17, I hit a very difficult, dark spot, which I'm not proud of, but it's part of my life. It's part of my story. I started to living on my own, doing my own thing, and then one day I got tired because I thought I could please God and please myself at the same time, and you cannot do that. So I remember, I'm not gonna tell you because it was in the 1900s, so you're gonna make fun of me. I remember the date when went down on my knees and I said, "I'm sorry because everything I've done, do with my life whatever you want." And I will tell you that was the most innocent and risky prayer I ever prayed. Because when you tell God, do with my life whatever you want, He starts working in your life. If you can see this picture, fast forward a few years later, and I landed here at Baptist Bible College. I was the very first guitar major this school ever had. Let me tell you, you guys are blessed. I played at a band here on a missions emphasis week where 1/3 of the campus walk out this room because of the music we were playing, which is actually the normal music for you guys. So you guys are blessed. So I was for over 3 years I studied and I played music, and that was my life. I wanted to be this Latino Cristone, right? I wanted to be famous. I wanted to just not. I didn't want to be famous. I just loved music. So I had a couple of bands and we played. And then I realized that I was doing again my own plan. I was trying to write my own story. I don't know how many of you have ever done that, but I will tell you that it's not a cool thing to do. I decided to leave BBC, now Missions University, and I started working at a local bank here in town. And I had a great career in banking. We were part of Seminole Baptist Temple down in the south side of town. And at a missions conference, we surrendered to become missionaries, to be missionaries. We did not know where. And I will tell you, my biggest fear was, man, I don't want to go to the jungle. I'm a city boy. And that's a true statement. But we said, God, if you, whatever you send us, we'll go. And I'll tell you that one day I get a call from the regional manager and she offered me my own branch, Kearney Central. Kearney Central. And she said, we have observed your career and we would like to make you a manager, having your own brand, your own branch. So I thought it was a cool thing for a guy that came and learned English as a second language at the age of 26 and barely knew that 2 plus 2 was 5. And here I am, being a bank manager. But again, I was in my own I was writing my own story. I told her that I was going to pray about it. And she looked at me like I was just weird. Why do you need to pray all this? It's gonna be 5 grand more a year, gonna be a lot of benefits for you and your family. I said, my wife and I pray for major decisions in life. On my way home, my cell phone rings, and I get a phone call from the athletic director, the AD here at BBC, offering me a job. He wanted me to be a soccer coach. I had played indoor, with the guys from BBC back in the day, and they wanted me to be the soccer coach. So I jokingly said, if you pay me what the bank pays me, I go coach soccer. We laughed. We move on in life. But then I get home. I get home and I talk to my wife and I said, "This is a crazy day for me being an immigrant, coming, learning a second language, and then I have two job offers on the same day. This is crazy." And we have a God moment because my wife said, "You need to leave the bank. You need to go and coach soccer at BBC." And she added one more thing. "And you need to go back to school because God called you into the ministry. God didn't call you to be in the corporate world." I thought that was insane because we get things in our life and we get great offers, but a lot of those offers are not within God's will for our life. So for the next 5 years, I coached soccer at BBC, and what an amazing opportunity it was. There you see a lot of guys. I'm very serious. I'm into the job, right? And we had my first season was just amazing. It was the second best season the school ever had. I was just sharing the story that the school in Kansas invited us to play for their homecoming. They are D1 school. We are a D3 Christian college. And they had the whole party ready to celebrate, right? When I look at the roster, there was no one American player. There were soccer players from Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Africa, Europe. And here we are, 13 kids at a Bible college going into that game. Halftime, 0-0. Their coach is upset. He's just frustrated. And I said, "Listen, we need just one goal, and we'll go home with a victory." And I remember, and I remember we scored that goal, and we came back, and the phone started ringing here like crazy because Baptist Bible College, how we defeated this D1 school, and it was just an amazing moment. But I tell you, the greatest thing was that for my wife and I, coaching soccer was an opportunity to invest in the lives of our players. They live life. I had a soccer player that he will bring boxes of spaghetti and he'll tell my wife, "When I want spaghetti, can I come to your house and you'll cook for me?" So there we have, boxes of spaghetti, for the whole thing every season. So we share life with our players because it was important for us. We counsel them. We counsel their girlfriends. We told them, she's good for you. And we told them, "Wait, man, you might double check. Maybe a second option will be good for you. Maybe get a plan B." We were very honest. I don't know why y'all are laughing. More than one, right? More than one person here might be thinking a second opportunity somewhere else. But anyway, we spend a great deal of time with the people because we think the Christians we have to share life with others. It was not just practice and games. You see this next picture. Um, there I am with that little kid, Javier. So now that little kid is taller and stronger than his dad. That's my second son. And last Sunday, he was at a soccer game. He wanted to say greetings to you guys. Can we show this video, please? Hello, Western University. My name's Teresa. Another mission. Well, that looks like the video froze on us, but that's too bad. You can skip this part because it seems like the video froze. I apologize for that. We tested before and it worked well, but it's all good. Technology works against us sometimes. So he's at a soccer player with 30,000 people, and I say, "Javi, you got to say hello to Mission University." So there you are. That's the number one sport, in the country, in our country. So in 2012, we were approved with the Baptist Bible Fellowship International with the goal to become missionaries in the country of Uruguay. So the video you just saw is just a part of our culture. People are passionate about sports, and sometimes we minimize soccer here in the states because the 1-0 it feels like boring, right? But the reality is there's a whole culture. Soccer has stopped wars. If you read about it, when the national team plays in country, I've heard there are a couple guys from Brazil, right? Raise your hand. Where are you guys at? Maybe you're not here. Anybody from Brazil here? Okay, good to see you, man. So they understand what I'm gonna say. When our national team plays, the country stop, right? Am I right? It's a big cultural thing. So sports continue to be a huge part of our family. And then God came from the blind side. If I speak of the blind side, if you get tackled, I'm talking about what? What sport? American football. So sadly, we'll involve in different sports. Well, we arrived on the field almost 10 years ago, and our boys started to play American football. So there he is having the center of this picture. He's a quarterback, and Felipe played quarterback, and Nick is a wide receiver. So talk about something completely different. That was not part of the story that I was writing in my life. My boys were fourth generation soccer players, and here they said, "I'm gonna play American football." But God has something special within my life that I never foreseen before, and here we are. How is a quarterback, both tackle and flag. And if you know, flag is going to be on the Olympics in LA 2028. So right now, flag football is the fastest growing sport worldwide. Any of you play flag before? Okay, maybe it's time to get back because we need clubs around the world. So that was another thing that got brought into my story that I can say, man, I never saw that coming. And I tell you, Javi, he's 20. At the age of 17, he was the only minor playing in the South American tournament in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he earned the respect of all the players. But I tell you what I love of my son is the fact that he uses football as an avenue to talk about Jesus. And I love that. And then Nicholas, our youngest one, he plays, he's a wide receiver. You can tell the attitude is right there. Catching the ball, celebrating, just big. And last year he was an MVP in the 2025 tournament. He was national champion and MVP. I'm gonna warn you about the next picture because I'll tell you, life is not pretty sometimes. This is a quarterback. This is Javi. Third day of the year, sprained ankle. So that picture on the right, him, I don't know, he's reading his devotion on the phone or playing video games. I don't care. But the reality is, you know what he's doing there? He's being a counselor at the youth camp because he said, I am injured, but I can still touch people's lives. He was a drummer for the band, at the youth camp. And then we see the MVP, the next picture. First practice, broken collarbone. Any of you had that happen to you? One, two. There's nothing you can do about it. Just wait. Wait to be healed. At the very first practice, he fractured his collarbone. So he missed all preseason. He missed the first two games. Recover well. In both cases, we sat down and we said, listen, this is part of God's plan. We don't understand. We don't like it. But this is what he brought into our life. But we must endure this and move on and trust. Injuries happen. You get hurt. In life, injuries happen and you get hurt. The first half of the year, we were losing almost every game, and it was rough. If you have been part of a losing team, it's not pretty. I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand because we don't want you to make you feel bad this morning. It's not pretty. It's difficult. We had 2 weeks off in between certain games, and they started telling me, "Hey, could you coach our team?" And I said no. Because one thing in music and sports that I've done as a father, I said, I'm not going to teach them music and I'm not coaching. I'm just going to be a dad. That was a personal decision. So when we came the time to get back to play, I asked him to have a word and I said this. The past 5 weeks, you were your own worst rival. And listen to me this morning because this might be you this morning. I told the team, in the past 5 weeks, you have been your worst rival because you know how to play this sport. But you got to focus on the fundamentals. Do not argue with each other. Encourage your teammates when they make mistakes. Keep a low profile and celebrate at the end of the game. Respect your rival. Do not argue with the refs, and everything's gonna be okay. And then fast forward, and then won, and they became the first trophy is the latter part of the tournament, and they became national champions, and nobody could believe it because when you have a team, they have been literally trashed the half of the season. Here's what happened in the second half. Everybody comes and plays you with overconfidence, right? You know what I mean, athletes, right? They think, oh, it's not worth it to even play them. So they became national champions. So why I'm telling you all this? Because my personal story has been all about unexpected situations, my own failures, injuries, and in also victories. Go to your Bibles to Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great cloud of a witness, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and the perfecter of our faith. I wanted to encourage you this morning. And I know maybe I'd be a little unfair with the people that are not into sports, but I'm going to include you as well. Maybe you are just performing in life. And you know in life you got injured. And sometimes you feel like you're losing and you're losing over and over and over. And you see very little wins in your life. In this portion of the scripture, we see the Lord is giving us some tools on how to perform in life as believers. First, it says, lay aside every weight and sin. Let me tell you, we had some profound conversations with our soccer players. I got to a point with one player that I said, man, you gotta leave the Bible college because this is not good for you or the people around you. You gotta go back home and rethink your life and then return. And also I'll say this that I was not always saying that because Mr. Ray Adams taught me a tremendous lesson. Because one day I was very frustrated with some of my players and I said, man, those guys shouldn't be here. And Ray said, who can you point to the guy cannot change? And I learned that and it has been in my heart. And maybe some of you are judging others because you see their lifestyle or their life choices. You got to have grace and mercy on people. But here says that in order for you to perform well, you got to make radical decisions, especially when you know that there are things in your life that are not good for you. And those things are going to make you stumble in the race. You're old enough for me to just plainly make that statement, and you know in your heart. And none of us here can say that we're perfect or sinless. But what a difficult stage when you know you're willingly going and sin, or you keep things in your life that you know that are against the biblical standard we ought to live. Sometimes we feel like everything is against us, or everything in life is going wrong. Your story will have failures. It will. And it's okay. Because sometimes, not sometimes, God will use those failures to make you a stronger, a better Christian. So I hope you understand that nobody should expect perfection from you right now. But yes, God is expecting from you obedience. Your stories will have injuries, broken relationships, things that have been difficult at home from the time you were born, from the time you were born. Yeah. You were born from the time you were born. You can hashtag Esteban Alvarez. You can put that. I like to see those memes today. Okay. Maybe from the time you were born, you see negative and difficult things and pain. There is hope in Jesus. Because I know that a missionary loved my dad when my dad walked in the streets of Montevideo just wearing a pair of shorts. And my grandfather was an alcoholic, and my other grandfather in jail being an alcoholic and doing all kinds of bad things. But when Jesus comes into our life, he allows us to recover and break the chains. So you will recover from those injuries, and as long as you put the greatest doctor in your life, which is Jesus. And sometimes you also gotta let the injuries of life heal. But how often we camp on those injuries, the things that have hurt us, and we go and relive those things over and over. Sometimes you just simply have to let it go. And then in the future, God is going to reveal why you went through some certain things. The second thing is run with endurance the race that is set for us. Each of us have a race that is unique. Your life is different than mine. Yours is different than his. Yours is different than his. Our race is unique because we are created in a unique way. So one thing that sometimes is stopping us from moving forward is how we compare ourselves with others. We think we ought to be the stars. Well, let me tell you, there's something that happens at Bible colleges. Sometimes the worst students are the ones that we make it on the mission field, on the ministry. This is not a green light for you guys to go do whatever you want, right? But the reality is, endurance means that when life gets difficult, when things are going wrong, and sometimes like a domino effect, one bad thing after another one, or sometimes we feel like everything is against us. Endurance is that personal desire to continue no matter what. No matter what, how hard it gets, I'm going to continue to be faithful to God. I'm going to continue to study the best I can. I'm going to continue to be the best worker. I'm going to continue to be the best athlete. How many of you had a bad season in a personal level? Just be honest. It's all good. It's all good. Raise. Don't you feel great when things start turning over and you say, man, and then you go and you reflect and you know the things that you were doing wrong. And then you said, man, I learned so much. You know, the Christian faith or the Christian lifestyle requires endurance. Endurance means simply, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue. And the third thing that we see in Hebrews here is looking to Jesus. Concentrate, fix our eyes on him. I'm going to be plain honest with you. Some of you might not even care about Jesus right now. It's all good. I love the fact that you're exposed to some biblical teaching. I know the fact that you have Christian friends. By the way, we're not perfect people. But let me tell you, to look at Jesus and his life, his own endurance, and how he persevered until the end is the best model that you can look at. So here we see that sometimes you are your worst enemy and you lose because you blame yourself for your past failures or you don't see the potential within you. Look at Jesus, ask him to do whatever he wants in your life, and you'll see greater things happening. Sometimes you look around and you lose focus. I know I did it at times. But let me tell you, this morning when Dr. Milioni gave me the theme of what's my story, I started thinking in my own life, reflecting, and I went back how many times I failed to God, how many times I failed as a husband and as a father, and how much grace at the same time God has poured into my life. And I reflected on how many times God forgave me and how patient God has been with me. And He will be with you. One thing I must say, letting God write my story has been the best thing I've decided to do in my life. To tell Him, do with me whatever you want. You write my story. And then I started thinking about something, Dr. Miliani. How are they going to answer when someone in 20, in 30 years ahead, they ask them, or they ask you, what's your story? Or they'll ask you, what's your story? Or in 20 years when they ask you, what's your story? And I started thinking, well, in 20, 30 years, hopefully you will no longer be a student here at a mission university. You will be in a different stage of life. Maybe someone's going to come and say, hey, so tell me about your story. So if you all do this exercise right now and go to the future, how would you answer that question in the future? Because your present life is going to determine that future answer. The way you live in Christ is going to determine the rest of your story. I've seen a lot of people with potential, a lot of smart people, a lot of 4.0 students that we thought they were going to kill it there in the world, for God and blah, blah, blah. And they're far away because they were writing their own story. They were thinking only about their academic status and not their own personal relationship with Christ. Obedience, holiness are things that must be in the life of the believer. So my question to you is, what do you need to abandon this morning in order to be a better Christian? What kind of weight or what kind of sin do you need to leave that you know that is part of your life? Or are past things weighing heavily in your heart in such a way that you cannot move forward? You know the Lord wants you to lay those things at His feet and free you from those things from the past. Or maybe are you trying to write your own story and maybe it's a good one in your mind, but you know in your heart that it's not working this morning. I wanted to encourage you. Let God write your story.